So week 8 of the National Football League is in the books. So is the trade deadline for the 2021 NFL season. We'll talk about both today. Number of other topics have cropped up. We'll get to those as well. Jam-packed show. Don't want to delay. Let's get straight to the proceedings this evening. You are locked into the 219th installment of the Louie T Network podcast that starts now. Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the 219th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. So much to get to today. NFL trade deadline has come and went. We'll talk about the damage done there. Also, week 8 in the National Football League was one to forget for some and to remember for others. We will digest all of that. So you go ahead, put your skates on right now. We will get to week 8 in the National Football League here at some point. Also, I want to start this show off, though, talking about a couple of issues and topics that we probably won't have a ton of time down the road to get to necessarily. So I want to address right now. Start off with Henry Ruggs III, who was in a car accident that turned out to be fatal, not for him, but for the other driver or one of the passengers in the other vehicle. In like 3 a.m, Henry Ruggs was in a 2-car accident in which he ran into another car. He seemed to be intoxicated. Don't know all the facts. I don't like to speculate, but what's being put out there right now is that he, in fact, was inebriated. And if that is, in fact, the case, that is a Class B felony in the state of Nevada, meaning that he could be sentenced to 2 to 20 years, depending on how the judge feels for essentially vehicular manslaughter. It's essentially what it's going to turn out to be. And if it does turn out to be that, and look, someone loses their life, someone needs to pay a price. That's generally the way I feel. And, unless something just happens, it's crazy. And, but this is a avoidable situation. So I want to say this real quick. I think most of us, and I don't like speaking for other people, so I won't do that, but a lot of people drive buzzed. I'm guilty. Guilty as charged. I know how much alcoholic intake I can have and still operate a motor vehicle. I'm not advocating for that. Okay? Probably shouldn't be doing that, but I know if I can or can't drive. I've been in situations where I know I was in no position to drive. And generally, okay, there was this one time where I didn't make the best decision. Luckily, I don't know, by the grace of God, I made it home. However, generally speaking, there's probably been 5 times in my life, and, because I'm generally not behind the wheel if I know I'm going to have a heavy alcoholic intake. But there have probably been about 5 times where I drove, didn't intend to get lit, but I did, and said, you know what, I can't do this. I can't put myself and others at risk. And 4 of those 5 times, I made a smart decision. You have to be smart about these types of situations. Don't put yourself in this situation. Don't put others in a situation. I lost a great friend at the age of 16 to a drunk driver. And it seems like the people that are drunk, this is the part that always pisses me off about drunk driving accidents. The people that are drunk, that are intoxicated, that are high on drugs, whatever the case, they never die. They're never the ones that perish in these accidents. It's always the person that didn't do anything wrong, that's in the other car, that's minding their own business. They're usually the ones that are deceased at the end of these things. And the person that's drunk that caused the accident in the first place, they get out and walk away like nothing happened. It's a damn shame. And I'll say this, make a smart decision. At one point back in the 90s, early 2000s, I get it if you didn't want to take a taxi home, but you still had taxis available. But, taxis, they claw you and bust you over the skull. I get it. Now there are Ubers, there are Lyfts, they have flat fees for where you're going. There's no excuse. Find a way home that doesn't put others at risk and yourself at risk. And for Henry Ruggs III, I don't know what the outcome of this is going to be, but you had too much to lose to put yourself in a position to where you felt like you needed to drive home in your Corvette. Park it, get a ride home, or get someone else to drive you home, and you go back and get your car the next day. Too much at stake. And now someone's lost their life, and you might have lost yours as well in the process. We'll see how this thing turns out, but it's not a good look for Henry Ruggs III as we sit here right now. Again, don't have all the facts or the information necessary to make a determining factor one way or the other, but it doesn't sound like he was in the right here. And if a human life was lost because of his negligence, shame on him. And hopefully that's a lesson to somebody out there. Someone out there gets that message loud and clear. Jalen Smith, as we transition to something a lot less heavy. Jalen Smith, former Dallas Cowboys linebacker, was released by the Cowboys. I was like, oh my God, Jalen Smith getting released. I don't really know why he's getting released, but hell, we want him. And teams were lined up, including Washington, lined up. And I said, hey guys, I don't know about this. Dallas let him go in season. Now, I get the whole injury, aspect and component of it, where if he gets hurt, his salary for next year is guaranteed. They don't want to be on the hook for that. He's not playing well. So let's just go ahead and get rid of this guy before he tears his ACL in practice as a scout team member. Let's not put ourselves at risk here. So I get that whole aspect of it. But I'm like, they made a conscious decision to eat the rest of this man's contract essentially for the year and say to themselves, we don't want him to injure himself in a Dallas Cowboys uniform so that we have to pay him next year and he stinks. Let's just move on from him. There's no way you move on from a guy that you think still has value to your team and you're a potential Super Bowl contender. If there was any value Dallas thought they could extract from Jalen Smith, just still having him on the roster, just because a guy gets demoted doesn't mean you need to cut him. If they thought he was a good football player, they would have held on to him. They've already paid him pretty much for the season. They would have held on to him. But they didn't see the upside in holding on to this guy. They thought he stunk. So they cut him. Then the Packers swooped in, signed him up. They figured they had all these linebacker woes. They needed help. So he goes in there, and right away they realize, oh, this is why he was available. Yikes. And the Packers are one of those teams where you say, if you can't make it at linebacker in Green Bay, you can't make it anywhere. They stink at linebacker. They've got a ton of injuries. Jalen Smith was released again today. So that makes it 2 releases for him in the span of a month. I'm anxious to see if anybody else jumps at the opportunity now to sign him this time around. There were about 3 or 4 teams lined up the first time. I wonder if someone else feels like, hey, if we can just get our hands on him, we could turn this guy into a stud. There's always one coach out there that thinks he can be a saver, right? We'll see. Don't save him. He don't want to be saved. Don't save him. He don't want to be saved. We'll see if somebody decides to save him. But right now, Jalen Smith's career is drowning, and I don't know if there's a buoy or a life raft coming to save him. And with that said, let's jump into our gem dropping session for today. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind. Let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, Louie T-double-E. Let me open you up. Get you thinking a little bit. So the trade deadline has come and gone. We've been covering this thing as it's progressed. Let's recap the happenings of today and overall for this trade deadline. It wasn't a dud, There were years where we thought big moves were coming and nothing happened. We got a blockbuster trade with Von Miller going to the Rams, Zach Ertz going to the Arizona Cardinals. Some things did happen that we think are going to impact some big time teams in the Super Bowl potentially this year. So moves were made. Let's talk about all the things that were done. So specifically today, okay, so yesterday we left off Von Miller to the Rams, massive move. And I said, we may not be done. There still could be more that happens. Well, more did happen. Nothing truly impactful though. You know, maybe one move. Let's talk about that one first. Melvin Ingram to the Chiefs. Remember, I told you guys yesterday, and I might have talked about this last week. I believe I only talked about it yesterday. And I meant to talk about it on Friday, but there was no Friday podcast. That the Chiefs were interested in Melvin Ingram. And the Steelers knew that the Chiefs were interested. They said, hey, we know you want him, and we'll hold that thought. We're going to see if we can find an NFC team that wants him. And if we find one, we're going to ship him off to the NFC. If we can't, we'll get back to you. They tried. They failed. They went back to the Chiefs and say, hey, still think we can get that deal done for Melvin Ingram? It was like, yeah, we still want him. And so they moved Melvin Ingram, do the Pittsburgh Steelers, to the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't know the compensation at this very moment. It can't be all that much. Probably a late round draft pick in next year's draft, if I had to guess, and you just keep it pushing. So we'll see what happens there. Melvin Ingram was disgruntled, wasn't happy about his snaps in Pittsburgh. I think he had a mysterious groin injury this week that kept him out of the game versus the Browns. I think they just didn't want him to get injured because they were going to move him, and they did. He is now a Kansas City Chief. They could Chiefs member, and they can use the help along that defensive front. They need to get after the quarterback a little bit more, and they could definitely use another guy opposite Frank Clark. And we'll see. Now, Chris Jones, Frank Clark, Melvin Ingram may make up a very formidable trio up front, getting after opposing quarterbacks for this Kansas City Chiefs defense that I think has looked better the last 3 weeks. But again, 2 out of those 3 games were against NFC East opponents, so take it with a grain of salt. Speaking of the Kansas City Chiefs, they weren't done there. They moved guard Laurent Duvernay-Tardif, love saying that, to the Jets. So for Dan Brown, tight end Dan Brown, was sent to the Chiefs. So a smaller move, not sending ripple effects and waves through the NFL, but Chiefs offloading a guard who seemed to be out of the mix this year with all the moves made this offseason. They revamped their entire offensive line, and I told you, a lot of those dudes that decided to sit out due to COVID, and we know Laurent Duvernay-Tardif is a medical doctor. And so he decided that COVID and helping and being on the front lines was more important than playing football. More power to him. And a lot of guys that decided they weren't going to play football due to COVID, and I don't blame any of them, a lot of them didn't come back to their jobs, comfy and cozy waiting on them. You know what I mean? Especially Kansas City Chiefs players, almost like they were penalized. Damian Williams left. This guy was damn near this close to being the Super Bowl MVP a couple of years ago, and decides to sit out due to COVID, comes back, and the Chiefs are like, we don't need you anymore. Sorry, not sorry. Get out of here. So, and they're just giving him a new contract. You know what I'm saying? Like, he even played one single snap under his new contract. It's crazy. So, the Chiefs really didn't feel warm and fuzzy about the guys that decided not to play last year, and Laurent Duvernay-Tardif was one of those players. Anyhow, he's now a New York Jet. They get tight end Dan Brown in exchange. And then Charles Omenihu is now a member of the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers traded a late round draft choice. I think it was a 6th rounder for Omenihu from the Texans. So Texans receive a late round draft pick. 49ers receive Charles Omenihu. We'll see if that helps this 49ers team, which means the 49ers still think they can make a push and a run, and they should. The 49ers right now, if I'm not mistaken, are right in that mix with those teams with 3 wins jumbled up. I think 9 is going to get it done for that 7 seed, and the 49ers are right in that mix. They make a move to strengthen and bolster that defensive front, especially with the injury to Javon Kinlaw. I think he might be done for the season. And so they need another body in there that can be active and make some things happen. They think that guy is Charles Omenihu. We will see if it comes to fruition or not for them. But essentially, that was those were the deals for today. There was one more that beat the deadline. I want to say the Broncos traded a cornerback, Kerry Vincent Jr., to the Jets, if I'm not mistaken. I think that one snuck right in at the very end. Again, not a major deal. It's a minor move on the grand scale, in the grand scheme of things. On the big scale, it's a very, very low move. Anyhow, recapping what did happen, and then we're going to talk about the moves that didn't happen, because I think sometimes as fascinating as what did happen is what didn't happen as well. So we'll see what happens. CJ Henderson to the Carolina Panthers in exchange for tight end, what was it? Dan Arnold. So that was one of the first moves we saw happen in this trade deadline window, if you will. Thought they gave up on Henderson a little bit too early, but again, he wasn't drafted by the guys that were now in Jacksonville, and they decided he didn't fit what they were doing, or they didn't really care for him, or his presence in the locker room, his play on the field, whatever the case may be. They moved on after just a year of a former first-round pick. Panthers get Henderson. Panthers also acquire Stephon Gilmore. So you can see that the Panthers weren't really confident in their secondary. I think the Stephon Gilmore move was more about them losing J.C. Horn than anything else. But Gilmore is now back. He had an interception, if I'm not mistaken, in his first game back with the Panthers this past weekend against the Atlanta Falcons. So we saw that move made as Gilmore was traded from New England to the Carolina Panthers. Zach Ertz to the Cards. We talked about that already numerous times. Kenny Young to the Broncos. I alluded to this yesterday, but just to rehash it again, Kenny Young, a young, no pun intended, up-and-coming linebacker that started out with the Baltimore Ravens, was drafted out of UCLA by the Ravens, then traded to the Rams. I forgot what the deal was that got him there. I think it was the Marcus Peters deal is what got Kenny Young to the Rams, and the Rams sent Marcus Peters to Baltimore, and that's how Kenny Young ended up in L.A. And he's been playing phenomenal football. I mean, outstanding football, flying around the field, making plays. He was coming off of one of his best performances of the season as a Ram when he was dealt to the Broncos. And he was surprised. He was upset, but he said, I get it. It's a business. This is all based off of financials. They need the cap space. I understand that part of it. I don't like it because you just sent me from a Super Bowl contending team, and I was playing exceptionally well, to a team that's probably not going anywhere this year, and that's frustrating. But he understood the situation. Doesn't mean he is okay with it. It's just he understands. Anyway, that's why I talk about all the things the Rams have done. You're going to sacrifice when you invest in so few. You're going to sacrifice some players, and Kenny Young was one of those guys. Joe Flacco to the Jets. I wonder if the Jets are regretting this. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't, because they couldn't have known what Mike White was going to do in the game on Sunday. I would imagine that the reason for trading for Flacco was they thought Mike White was going to stink it up. They'd have Flacco be ready to go this upcoming week, and they'd go forward with Flacco until Zach Wilson was healthy and ready to come back from his MCL sprain. Well, Mike White lit it up. They win, and now I'm pretty sure they're like, Joe, about starting, yeah, we're going to need you to be ready to back up on Sunday instead of starting. You okay with that? Not that he has a choice, but anyway, Joe Flacco is a Jet traded from the Philadelphia Eagles. Obviously, we talked about Mark Ingram to the Saints. from Houston. There was this big brouhaha, with, in particular, it's funny because Ingram wasn't the guy making any noise about this, but rather his former teammate Brandon Cooks was disappointed. And he was like, look, man, don't leave me here by myself. All right. We stink. I got nobody here. You were one of the few guys that I really rock with. Where are you going? Why did y'all trade him? Well, then trade me too. Let me go. Free me. If anything, Cook should be like, look, I'm tired of being dealt. I get dealt every other year. His career is like a military family. Every 2-3 years, he's getting dealt somewhere else and packing up his shit and moving somewhere else. So he probably is like, look, I just want to stay in one place. So he was upset about it. And then he found out that the team went to Melvin Ingram Mark Ingram and said, hey, we refused any trade offers for you initially, but then the Saints hit us up. We know you're from there. You've played there before. Do you want to go there or not? If you say no, then we're going to keep you. If you want to go, then we'll ship you off. He was like, yeah, I'll go back home. So once Cooks found out about that conversation and that this was a mutual trade, then he was like, oh, okay, I'm cool with it. What difference does it make? Even if Ingram didn't want to leave, who cares what you think? Anyway, I digress. He's now a New Orleans Saints. Saint is Melvin Ingram. And then, of course, the Von Miller trade yesterday. We talked about that ad nauseum yesterday on the podcast. So let's talk about, those are the deals that did happen. Okay, the notable ones. Now let's talk about the deals that didn't happen. And of course, we start with the headliner, Deshaun Watson. So it does turn out, and on Friday, I had this whole grandiose podcast lined up. And one of the things I was going to talk about was Dolphins head coach Brian Flores essentially having a media session in which they were coming after him hard and heavy, right? And he didn't want to lie. And the title of the podcast is going to be, I Can Lie to You If You Want Me To. Because his press conference essentially was, they asked him, hey, and this reporter, he laid it out beautifully. He was like, hey, like 6 months ago, you guys had said that you didn't want to trade Xavier Howard. You were adamant about getting something done with him, and you shut down any trade rumors. You were able to then work something out with him, and he's still here. You have an opportunity to shut down any trade rumors about, Tua Tagovailoa or Deshaun Watson, but yet you continue to kind of leave the door open. Why is that? And Brian Flores is like, you got me, but Tua's our quarterback. And so we're going to ride with Tua this year, and we're going to keep playing football. Tua's our quarterback, and I don't really answer those questions, so that's not for me to answer. It's convenient when you don't want to answer. Now, I don't answer those type of questions. But if it's a guy that you want to keep and you're not interested in moving, you can definitively say, nah, we're not doing that. Anyway, the whole 35 to 45 seconds, maybe it was a minute of Flores trying to talk his way around the question, it all said, I want to tell you that we're not trying to trade for Deshaun Watson, but that would be a lie. So what I'm telling you is, Tua's our quarterback. Take it for what it's worth. I can't tell you we're not trading for Deshaun Watson because we're actually actively trying to trade for Deshaun Watson. But he couldn't say that. But in so many words, he did say that without saying it. Anyway, their owner, Stephen Ross, set up a meeting with Deshaun Watson and actually met with him yesterday. But that wasn't enough time. If the Dolphins were truly serious about making this happen, that meeting should have occurred last week. Not 24 hours before the trade deadline was to meet its conclusion. Anyway, the fact that they met with Deshaun Watson, if I'm Tua, I'm like, well, it is what it is. He had to know, right? He had to know. It didn't get done. And I told you guys, I didn't think it would get done because it's just too complicated There's so many different factors. The biggest being, I don't even know if he's going to be able to play if I trade for him. That's number one. Number two, there's so many legal issues and hurdles that you have to clear before you feel confident in him being on the field for you. Three, there's a moral responsibility that you have to your fan base, this, that, and the third, and you need to figure out if Deshaun Watson is some type of serial predator or if he just got caught up in a situation. We all think we know how this went, but that's not for us to decide. That's for him to decide as the owner of the Miami Dolphins as to whether if he wants to invest in this guy or not, because he's the face of your franchise if you trade for him. And then the last thing is, if I'm the Texans, I said this from the jump, I'm not just taking any willy-nilly offer. I want the best that I can possibly get for Deshaun Watson. I'm already paying this dude to not play this year, so it's not like I'm hurting. All right, I've already made the financial decision to pay this dude to stay away. So at this point, I'm not looking to deal him just because. I'd love to wash my hands clean of this situation and just move on, but I want every single draft pick and asset I can get out of Deshaun Watson, because again, 26-year-old quarterbacks in the prime of their career that look like they've got Hall of Famer written all over them don't get traded in the prime of their career very often. So I'm going to try to get an unprecedented deal for him, and I think the best way to do that is to wait till the offseason. You're closer to a resolution to a situation, and you know exactly what you're getting in the 2022 draft. You trade him away now, you have no idea. And if he plays, whomever you trade him to is going to be better because of his presence. And now that's going to make your deal look even worse, because that pick you get in 2022 is going to be lower in the draft, not higher. So I didn't think it was beneficial for the Texans to make the move. Wait until the offseason. The Dolphins will still be interested in the offseason. They'll still want him. They'll stink this year, and they'll realize they need him more now than ever. And there'll be other teams. If the Eagles stink this year, they might throw their name in the hat. The Panthers might revisit the situation and decide, you know what? Yeah, we do want Deshaun Watson. And the Broncos, same thing. There'll be a number of teams that will look at the situation, reassess it in the offseason and say, you know what? We're all in, okay? We talked to the kid. He made a series of mistakes. He's not a bad dude. We've talked to people around the situation that know him. We feel confident pulling the trigger here. And I think they're going to get a good deal for him. But it wasn't going to happen at the trade deadline. I just didn't see it happening. How about Odell Beckham Jr.? Shame on you if you step to the old dirty Beckham. There was a lot of scuttlebutt about whether this guy would be moved or not. And I said, I don't think he's going to get traded. I think he gets traded in the offseason, similar to Deshaun Watson. I think Odell Beckham Jr. was never a great fit in Cleveland. Since he's gotten there, he's either been somewhat of an outcast, but still productive, or he's been injured. It just never seems to fit. And they actually seem like they're a better team, and this sounds crazy because he's so good. They actually seem like they're a better, more cohesive unit when he's not on the field than when he is. And it's crazy because there have been times where he's been on the field and you feel like they're not utilizing him well enough, but then they throw it to him and then he drops it. In some critical situations, we're not talking about a 1st and 10 drop. We're talking about 3rd and 4th down drops where drives are over because this guy just dropped a wide open pass and would have gotten the 1st down had he caught it. So I don't think he's focused. I don't think he's healthy. And I don't think the Browns necessarily, especially Baker Mayfield, I think Baker Mayfield's over it. And now this latest development, I think, makes Baker Mayfield say, man, get this dude the hell out of here as soon as possible. Apparently, Odell Beckham Jr.'s father decided enough was enough. My son's not getting the football. I'm going to prove to everyone that my guy's open, and it's not him the reason that he had 1 catch for 6 yards on Sunday versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. So he's showing clips of his son being open and Baker Mayfield not throwing him the ball. If I'm ODB, I'm like, hey, Dad, you got to sit down and shut the hell up. I love you to death. This is not the time or the place for this shit. Like, that's so my son is, 10, 11 years old and he's not getting any clock on the middle school team, or he's not playing enough in your local rec league. Like, come on, Dad. What are you doing? I don't know. Anyway, I digress. that situation seems like it can get a lot worse before it gets better. He's not going to be there after this year. I feel pretty confident in saying that, but no one was going to trade for that deal, right? Like, no one was trading for that contract. So I didn't see him being traded right now, but you reassess the situation in the offseason, and we'll see what happens then. Deshaun Jackson was another name that came up that we thought could potentially be traded. You know what that means when a team comes out publicly and says, hey, this guy is available, and nobody bites. The next course of action is he's getting released. And Deshaun Jackson seems like he's on the cusp of being released if he hasn't already been released. At the time of this podcast getting kicked off, he hadn't been released yet, but I wouldn't be shocked if by the time we're done with this podcast, he's already been released. So that was another deal that I thought might get done, but I'm like, who's really looking for a 34-year-old speedster? Like, it takes a special team with a special set of circumstances to want Deshaun Jackson. I could think of several teams that could use a Deshaun Jackson. Green Bay is one of those teams, and I know they got MVS, but Deshaun Jackson would fit perfectly in Green Bay. You know, I'm looking at other teams that want to stretch the football field vertically, that have quarterbacks that can get the ball out there. That's the one that makes the most sense for me. I think the Kansas City Chiefs could use a Deshaun Jackson. You know what I mean? Like, there are teams out there that could benefit from the services of a Deshaun Jackson. It wouldn't shock me if he ended up in a place like that. In a place like Kansas City or Green Bay, one of these places that could definitely use a shot in the arm at the receiver position with a guy that can flat out still fly. So we'll see what happens. I think he's going to be released. Nothing got done with Devontae Parker or Darius Slayton. You know, those were two names at the receiver position that I found intriguing. Thought someone might be interested in one of those two guys. Neither of those guys on the move today. Andy Isabella was another receiver that I thought somebody could come and rescue, and I didn't think it would take a lot to get him. He's so down, far down on the depth chart of the Arizona Cardinals, but nothing materialized there. Evan Ingram had a touchdown grab last night for the New York Giants. I thought the Giants would be all in on trying to move him similar to the way the Eagles were looking to move Zach Ertz. Apparently, they're not looking to shop him, or weren't shopping him as aggressively as they probably should have. He's not going anywhere. But, those were the moves that we thought could happen, didn't happen. And I'll just say this, and then we'll get to slate skating. When it comes to the NFL and the trade deadline, it's unlike the NBA or MLB because of one particular reason. And that one reason is the salary cap. There's a hard cap in the NFL. There is not a hard cap in the NBA or in MLB. And so you're able to make moves, and in the NBA, they try to make it so that every move that is made, it's equal value on both sides, not from a talent standpoint, but from a financial standpoint. The money has to make sense on both sides. However, there's no hard cap. Okay, you can trade for a guy, you can trade and get a guy at the deadline. And unlike the NFL, and once again, this is a little bit different in the NBA and MLB. In the NFL, draft capital is paramount. In the NBA, who gives a shit about a second round pick? I mean, seriously, you could have 8 second round picks. If somebody's got 8 second round picks in the NFL, you're like, oh my God, we're going to be so good. This draft is going to be epic. If you've got 8 second round NBA draft picks, nobody even bats an eye. You can say, hey, I'll give you all 8 of my second round picks for your 1 first round pick, and the team will be like, no. Like, no. I want the talented player at 13. I don't want 8 picks from 32 to 50. Keep them. They're all yours. I want the guy at 13. In MLB, there's like 900 rounds in that draft. and you're not going to see that player for 3-4 years anyway. So what difference does it make? Whereas in the NFL, draft capital And the combination of a hard cap makes it a lot tougher because whatever you're asking for has to make sense for me to pull the trigger on a guy that's more likely than not going to be a rental. Now, I may be able to re-sign that guy like the Rams, like they did with Jalen Ramsey, said, hey, we want to re-sign Von Miller after this season. That could change. If Von Miller could get injured, let's knock on some wood because I'm not advocating that happen, but he could get injured or he could not play well, and they could say, you know what, nah, we really don't necessarily need to have him back. But if he plays well, if he's the Von Miller that we think he still can be, especially with all the guys around him, he's not going to see as many double teams, chips, and things of that nature now. If he tears it up, they're like, yeah, no, we think we want him back. So it'll be interesting to see how, that situation goes. But more importantly, that's why you don't see as many trades being done, impactful ones, especially at the NFL trade deadline, because there's so many different factors that play into getting a deal done. Some of it is money, like, for instance, the rumor was that Odell Beckham Jr. to the Saints was a real thing and that they were this close to getting it done. But the problem was the Saints don't have the salary cap to fit him under their current situation. And the Browns are like, but we're not eating this money though. So you got to figure some shit out. You got to cut some dudes. That's not our problem. You got to figure it out on your own, on your end. We're not eating any of his salary so that you can get this guy under your cap. Figure some shit out, cut some dudes, do whatever you got to do. Hit us up if you figure some shit out, or else he'll stay here in Cleveland. We got no problems holding on to him. And like Denver, for instance, they had to make it work so that the Rams don't have a ton of cap space. Denver's like, don't worry about it. We want the second and third round pick so bad, we'll eat $9 million of his remaining salary this year. You just take the $700,000 and we'll call it even. Give me the second and the third and we'll call it even. The Browns are like, nah, we're not doing that shit. Figure it out. Then hit us up. So the cap came into play with Odell Beckham Jr., or else he's a New Orleans Saint right now. So it's so many different layers here with the NFL. That's why the trade deadline isn't as prevalent in this particular sport like it is in others. But this was a lot of activity for the NFL. This was a lot of activity. We generally don't get names changing teams like this, especially guys like Ertz and guys like Von Miller changing teams at this time of the year. Rarely do we see guys that are going to be truly impactful moving on, but that's what we got today. Anyway, let's go ahead and transition to our next segment, Slate Skatin. I'm going to go ahead, put my rollerblades on, get ready to rock and roll. We're going to run through these games really quickly and talk about how Week 8 was one of the zaniest weeks I have ever seen in NFL. I've been watching this for a very long time. I've been doing football pools and things of that nature for a very long time. This is the first time I can remember that I've seen so many people, including myself, and usually I'm not in that group, but I was terrible. I was one of the worst of the week with double-digit losses, and it's one thing when it's 13 games, and you only win 8, you only win 3 or 4 of them. Yikes, that's rough, but you don't get double-digit losses that way. There were 15 games this week. There were 15 games this week. And people had 12 and 11 and 10 losses. A bunch of people had 9. So many people with losing records this week, including myself. I already told you guys, I went 4 and 11 this week. I was absolutely horrid. And that's because this week was crazy. So let's get into it. We start in Atlanta, where the Carolina Panthers rally back and beat the Atlanta Falcons. This was a 10-3 game in the second quarter, and I thought, okay, the Falcons are going to win this football game. It's only a matter of time before they run away because the Panthers cannot score. And for whatever reason, the Panthers just field goaled the Falcons to death, and the Falcons had the faucet completely shut off. They could not score the football for whatever reason. It was ridiculous watching them struggle, make mistakes. This was the first game of both Stephon Gilmore coming back from his injury, but also they had been missing Shaq Thompson, who is one of the better linebackers in the league. They had been missing him for a few weeks. He was back. He had an interception in this game. also. So both of those guys come back. Both of those guys have immediate impacts. And the Panthers defensively are trying to get back to what helped them get off to a 3-0 start, because it was always the defense. The offense wasn't terrible in that 3-0 start, but it was the defense that was the catalyst. Remember, at one point, they were the number one defense in football. But again, we know why they were the number one defense. Playing Houston and the Jets, and teams like that in those first 3 weeks helped them build up that defensive rep. But I can tell you this much. Matt Ryan is missing Calvin Ridley. They got nothing out. And I told you guys in the preseason, the Falcons have no depth at receiver. They cannot afford for anybody to get injured, especially their frontline guys. Can't afford for Kyle Pitts. Can't afford for Calvin Ridley to go down. And really right now, they can't afford for anything to happen to Cordero Patterson. He's too big a part of their offense. But Ridley hasn't played in like 3 weeks due to personal matters. Don't know what's going on in his life. Wish him the best. And he needs to handle whatever's going on first before he even thinks about playing football. But with that said, it is killing this Falcons offense. They got away with it last week against Miami and the week before against Jacksonville. They couldn't get away with it this week. It was apparent that there were times where Matt Ryan forced the ball to Kyle Pitts, and there are 5 Carolina Panthers around him. It was insane. Panthers rallied back, field goaled the Falcons to death, and then scored a touchdown in the fourth quarter. Chuba Hubbard getting in the end zone, and they win this game 19-13 to get back to 500 on the season. It's a big win for the Panthers because they had been struggling, losers of 4 straight. They find a way to scratch and claw a win, and now they're back to 500 on the season. That's a debilitating loss for the Falcons because you had a chance to get over 500 after starting the season off 0-3, and now you see that go by the wayside. You start the season off 1-2. Then you were 1-3 after the loss to Washington, and then you won 2 in a row, and you had a chance to get back over 500, and you blow a golden opportunity. It's a double whammy too because it's a divisional game as well. Buffalo hosting the Dolphins. This game was a lot more competitive than the score indicates. 26-11 is the final score in this football game. Honestly, I was shocked that the Dolphins hung tough for as long as they did. This score was 6-3 at halftime, 3-3, at halftime. And the Dolphins had ample opportunities to be winning this game at halftime. They missed a kick, and then they had the football inside the Bills' 15-yard line with a chance to score with less than a minute to go in the second quarter. And they've got their tight end coming in motion pre-snap, and the ball hits Mike Gesicki in the stomach. It caroms off of him, and the Bills scoop it up. I mean, that's the shit that 1-7 teams do, though. Seriously. Like, that's some shit I expect Detroit, Jacksonville, and a team like Miami to do. Have a guy going in motion. They don't time it up right. Center snaps the ball. Tight end runs right in the way. Ball ricochets off of him, and he fumbles. Go figure. The Bills then took control of this game in the third quarter. Really, the early stages of the fourth. This thing was 6-3. Going into the fourth quarter before the Bills really ratcheted up their intensity, or was it? I think it was 3-10 going into the fourth quarter, and then they scored another touchdown in the fourth quarter, and then kind of ran away and hid. The Dolphins made a run, scored a touchdown. Tua had a quarterback sneak, go for 2 points, get that nice little pass to Gesicki there, and they're right back in it. And then the Bills did what championship teams do. They responded on the next drive. Don't give the Dolphins all that momentum and then go 3 and out and give it back to them and give them a chance to beat you. No, you go on a 6-minute drive, you get a field goal, push the lead back out to 2 scores at 9 at 22-11, and essentially put the game away with about 3.5 minutes to go. That's what they did, and they win this thing 26-11. Next game up on the docket is the 49ers and the Bears. The Bears stink, man. I'm so disappointed in myself. I had got by the Bears so many times that I went with the Bears in this game, but and they had a chance early. I mean, this is a game that they're up at one point, 16-9. They're up in this game. And that's when things started to fall apart after that. Jimmy Garoppolo gets a touchdown run, his first of 2 in the game. I couldn't believe they let Jimmy Garoppolo run on them. Let me see how many yards rushing Jimmy Garoppolo had in this game. I mean, the Bears' rush defense, I know Khalil Mack makes a huge difference, but damn, they couldn't stop anybody. Elijah Mitchell looked like Barry Sanders in this game. He killed them on the ground. Jimmy Garoppolo was running on these boys. Let me see. Jimmy Garoppolo only had 4 yards on 5 carries, but he had 2 touchdowns though. But Elijah Mitchell was what broke their back, because Jimmy can't put a team on his back and carry him to a victory, even though Jimmy's, had 322 yards passing. There was some big plays in there. One to Deebo Samuel on a screen on like 3rd and forever. It was like 3rd and like 23, and they throw a wide receiver screen to Deebo Samuel, and he picks up like 75. Stupid. It was 83. Dumb. Anyway, Deebo Samuel, we talked about this. They don't have shit else at receiver. Gotta stop Deebo. If anybody else gets you, you say, all right, you got me. Deebo Samuel, 6 catches, 171 yards in this game. If that isn't poor coaching by the Bears, I don't know what is. No other player for the 49ers had more than 59 yards receiving. Like, come on. The one guy that can get you, you let get you? Elijah Mitchell, 18 carries, 137 yards and a touchdown. The man was averaging 7.6 yards a pop. The Bears were disgusting on defense. We know the offense is trash. There was a highlight reel run by Justin Fields on a 4th down where he made like 8 guys miss, reversed field, and scored a touchdown. However, it was not enough in this game. And just to boot, because bad teams do dumb shit. Bad teams do bad teams things. They had a chance to tie the game up after that ridiculous Justin Fields run, and they missed the extra point. Typical bad team shit. 49ers get the win. They're now 3-4, snap a 4-game skid, and they're right back in the mix in that 7th wild card seed race. Bears drop to 3-5. Look, I wouldn't be shocked if they don't win another game this season, and that's a little harsh. They're going to run into somebody like Detroit and beat them, but they stink. They really do stink, do the Bears. Their offense is like Medusa, hard to watch. Speaking of hard offenses to watch, the Steelers get it done, 15-10 over the Cleveland Browns. This was some AFC North football right here. Physical, hard hitting, not a lot of points. And this is the kind of football that the Steelers weren't playing last year. Like, not to call the Steelers soft, but last year they looked like they were playing in the, AFC South. They didn't look like they were playing in the AFC North. They weren't running the football. They weren't hard-nosed. They were soft. I'm calling it what it was. They were a soft team last year. They're starting to morph back into the kind of team that they've been over the years. And this is out of necessity. Ben can't carry this team anymore. The offense isn't all that great. They drafted Najee Harris in the 1st round for a reason. Now they're realizing we have to lean on this guy. And they're starting to do that. This defense, I've said from the jump, they're the catalyst. They're what drives the Steelers. They've been outstanding all year long, but the offense hasn't been playing complimentary football. Well, they faked the field goal in this game right before half, and they put their kicker in harm's way. He gets destroyed on the sidelines, and he was out for the remainder of the game. So now they can't kick extra points. They got to go for 2. It was crazy because after their first touchdown, they had to go for 2. They go for 2. They get it. They have a penalty. Now they get moved all the way back to like the 12-yard line, and they still have to go for 2. It was crazy. Anyway, the Browns had every opportunity to win this game. They got stopped on 4th down twice. They fumbled. I thought the best opportunity was with 6 minutes and about 40 seconds left in the 4th quarter. They're driving. Baker Mayfield just has a big run on the 3rd down, gets hit. Could have been questionable as to whether it was laid out of bounds or not. He goes flying into the Cleveland bench. He gets up. He's pumped. Let's go. Throws a slant to Jarvis Landry 2 plays later, who gets the 1st down. They're inside the Steelers' 25-yard line, and he gets stripped of the football. TJ Watt recovers, and that was their best shot to win the game. They score a touchdown there. They're probably going to win. They're going to go for 2, whether they get it or not. I don't think the Steelers were going to be able to score a touchdown. They couldn't kick a field goal. So they were going to have to score a touchdown. They were going to win. And Jarvis Landry fumbled. And they never were in a position like that again the remainder of the game. They got the football back. They moved it a little bit, but they were never that close again. Steelers gut out a 15-10. This is one of those wins. Ben was so charged after this win. Tomlin was ecstatic. It's one of those wins that if we look back and the Steelers end up 10-7, 11-6, that's one of those wins that's a season-defining win. You go on the road against a divisional foe that's ahead of you in the division. They embarrassed you last year in your building. They beat you twice last season. This was a hell of a win by the Steelers. It wasn't pretty, but it was gritty. And most importantly, it was a dub and a big time one at that. Steelers are now 4-3. Meanwhile, the Browns blew a golden opportunity to move their record to 5-3. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs this year, are the Browns. I really don't. And the biggest issue with them is when they can't run it effectively. Their offense is so heavily skewed towards the run that everything plays off of the run game. And when they can't run it effectively, when Chubb doesn't have 130 and Kareem Hunt's behind him with 79, or Hunt's got 101 and Chubb's got 97, or they both have 100 yards, when they don't have damn near 200 yards rushing and Baker can then go play action fake off of that and have some wide open passing lanes to get the football, if they can't do that, their offense isn't the same. And that's what you're seeing right now. No Kareem Hunt. Chubb was okay in this game, but the Steelers aren't having that shit. And that your end result is 10 points. The Vikings weren't having that shit a couple of weeks ago. They scored 14. They got lucky. They won that game. You're not going to win many games scoring 14 points. They scored 10 here. Chubb, 16 carries, 61 yards. That ain't enough. That's not a bad day at the office, but that ain't enough. Not for this offense. They're now 4-4, and I think they're heading in the wrong direction. Personally, we'll see what happens with the Browns. Big win for the Steelers. Eagles Lions, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. 44-6. This was a absolute ass thrashing. The Lions are without a doubt the worst team in the league. And, you know, they gave their fans a false sense of hope. I fell for the banana in the tailpipe. I thought they could go out there, really give the Eagles everything they could ask for and have a chance late. This game was over in the third quarter, so much so that the game that I was watching that game on Fox, they said, hey, we're going to do you a huge solid. We know you don't want to watch this shit. We don't even feel right making you watch this shit. They sent us to Chicago and the 49ers. And I said, you know what, man? God damn, Fox. That's why I rock with you, man. CBS would have had me watching that shit till well in the fourth quarter. They said, hey, bro, we got you. It's the third quarter. We know this is a little early for this shit. We see where this is going. We got you. I appreciate that, man. That's why I get down with Fox. So, Jalen Hurts, 9 of 14 for 103 yards. Jalen Hurts, 7 carries for 71 yards. I told you, he's a glorified running back playing quarterback. That's their best offense. When he runs the football, he is dynamic, and he's their best offense. The Lions, they just stink, man. And there's one play from this game in particular, and this has nothing to do with the Eagles. It's 4th and 11. They decide to go for it. And this is an indictment on Jared Goff. This is the reason why Sean McVay couldn't stand to look at this dude anymore. Because Jared Goff is a clown show. It's 4th and 11. You're going for it from about the Eagles' 42-yard line. You got nothing to lose here. You're 0-8. They're up 10-0 at the time of this decision. You see where this game is heading. They're dominating you. You got a little bit of momentum. You're like, we're in no man's land. You punt. How much are you really netting if you punt it? It's too far for a field goal. Let's just go for it. All right. So they dropped Jared Goff back, and he was under heavy duress in this game. They were tearing his ass up. Were the Eagles. But he rolls out. A little bit of pressure coming at him. And it's 4th and 11, bruh. Just throw the shit to a receiver. There's got to be a blue jersey somewhere down. Just throw it to him. If it gets picked off, you might get pass interference. Who knows what's going to happen? Just give your guy a chance. This man throws the football 8 yards out of bounds on 4th and 11. And then pulls his chin strap off like he's pissed off. And I'm like, dude, you didn't even give your team a chance just now. What are you thinking? And that's the problem. He's not thinking. Jared Goff is a clown, okay? You can't win games with guys that don't understand situational football. It's 4th and 11. You can't chuck it 18 yards out of bounds. This is not 3rd and 11 and you're in the red zone and you're guaranteed a field goal. Let's get the points. It's 4th and 11. If you don't complete this pass, the other team gets the football. Jared Goff is a clown, and the Detroit Lions are a mess. I thought that was the most telling piece. It was just a 2-second clip of a fan with a trash bag over his head, a brown paper bag over his head, and he was holding up a sign that says, "This is not a costume." And the girl next to him is pointing to the sign like this, like, "Nah, this ain't a costume. We really do stink." They are horrible. If they go 0-16, I would not be shocked. They're going to beat somebody, though. They've been too close too many times this season. But if they went 0-16, I wouldn't be shocked. They are the epitome. Like, they would do something good. Not only would that be called back, but then they would go back on the next play and do something even worse that negates the thing that they did that was really good 2 plays before and go in the wrong direction. It's just amazing to watch how undisciplined and bad at the same time the Detroit Lions are. 44-6. Hated to make that all about Detroit, but they're that bad. The Eagles with the win, they're 3-5, and don't look now. They've got a very favorable schedule. I think they could turn this thing around, win some games, and put themselves in a position to maybe get that 7th seed in the NFC playoffs. We'll see. I won't hold my breath on that, but this was an impressive win. I can say this about the Eagles to start this season. They've beaten the teams that they're supposed to beat, and they've beaten them badly. And that's a good sign if you're an Eagles fan. Titans, Colts, this was a big-time game in the AFC South, because if anybody was going to have a chance at making the divisional race a race, it was the Indianapolis Colts, but they had to win this game. This is a team that started off the season 0-3. They scratched and clawed their way back to, I think they started the season off. Yeah, I think they did start it off 0-3. They scratched and clawed their way back to 3-4, after some big time wins. They beat Miami. That's not a big time win, but they go on the road. They beat San Francisco last week. And so now all of a sudden they're feeling good about themselves. And here's an opportunity to get back to 500 and then pull the Titans down to 5-4. So you're within a game of first place, or 5-3, excuse me. And so you were within a game of first place, just like that. And you would have split the season series, because this is the second time these two teams have met. Titans took care of business the first time these two teams met back in Nashville earlier in the season. So this was an opportunity to get the season split and bring them to within a game of you snatching first place away from them. So this was huge. They jump out to a 14-0 lead. They're dominating this game. And then it's like the wheels just started to fall off. Mistakes were made by Carson Wentz. He looked like the Philadelphia Eagles Wentz in this game, especially in the second half. Oh my God. So we get late in this game. Score is 31-24. All right. Or excuse me, 24-24. And the Colts are pent back deep in their own territory. And it's a screen. They call it a screen. And the Titans are all over this thing. And they're coming after Wentz. He's in the end zone. If he gets sacked, it's going to be a safety. He wants to throw it at the feet of his running back, but there's so many Titans around, he gets scared. He still should have thrown the shit down at the feet. He would have been fine. But he panics. He pump fakes. He holds on to it. And then this man throws one of the worst interceptions you will ever see in an NFL game. Short of a left-handed pick, you're not going to find one worse than this. And Elijah Molden is like, oh, don't mind if I do. Thank you. Catches it, walks into the end zone, and all of a sudden the Titans are up 31-24, and you're like, what in the hell just happened? But luckily enough for him, he makes a couple of crazy throws. One to Michael Pittman Jr., who is making this a weekly habit of putting his nutsack on somebody's helmet and getting a ball fragment grab, as I like to call them, BFGs, ball fragment grab, where you just got all kinds of ball residue on your helmet. And he did it against the Ravens, ran for a touchdown. He did it against the 49ers last week or 2 weeks ago, ran for a touchdown. He did it again in this game. He did it again This time on a desperation heave from Wentz on like 3rd and forever, he throws it up, which is what Jared Goff should have done. Hey, find the guy, throw it up to him, see what the hell happens. He throws it up, and there's like 4 Titans around, 1 Colt. That Colt just happened to be Michael Pittman Jr. He goes up, snatches the thing out of the air. Unbelievable catch. That got that drive kick-started. They ended up getting in the end zone on a touchdown run and by Jonathan Taylor. And all of a sudden, this game's tied at 31. And you're thinking, oh, shit, we're going to overtime. Go to overtime. And Colts get it first, and I think they got the momentum. Let's see what happens. They end up punting. The Titans get it. I said, well, the Titans are going to win now. They're going to kick a field goal. They end up getting the football. They end up punting. Colts get it back again. And I'm thinking, all right, now you got another shot. You probably weren't supposed to get this ball back. Now you got it. Let's see what you do with it. And Carson Wentz throws another pick. And this was so ill-advised. It was double coverage. He didn't see the safety. I don't think the receiver was open, even if the safety's not there, but he never saw the safety coming down. He walks right in front of it, picks it off to Kevin Byard, and that sets up the game-winning field goal. Titans come back from down 14 to beat the Indianapolis Colts in Indy, 34-31. That pretty much cements that division as long as the Titans now, again, Derrick Henry being out, huge deal. We'll see how they handle that. But with 3 games, with a 3-game cushion on anybody in the division, and having swept the Indianapolis Colts, which means that's essentially a 4-game lead on them, I can't see a way that the Titans blow this. You know, they could limp to the finish and still win this division. I think this division is all but spoken for now. The question is, how good can the Titans be, and how well will they circumvent the injury of one Derrick Henry? Big win for the Titans. That's just, and you know what? That loss is a microcosm of the season for the Colts. They've had so many chances to win a lot of these games, and they've blown it with bad play, turnovers, and untimely mistakes. That's to me a microcosm of their season and why they're at 3-5 instead of 5-3 right now. Bengals Jets might be the most entertaining game of the day. It was ridiculous. It eliminated everyone except one. Big shout out to Silver Villains. If you're out there, Silver V, congratulations for winning the 9th annual Soul Survivor Pool, the LouieTeeNetwork Soul Survivor Pool. 9 years in running, I still have not won a Survivor Pool. I don't know. I must be cursed or something, man. It just, I don't know, for whatever reason. And I make the same mistakes. I deserve to lose because I make the same dumbass mistakes week in, week out. I knew that everyone was picking Cincinnati. I knew better. I said, this is a bad sign. Don't do this. I did it anyway because I said it's the Jets and they're starting Mike White. Oh, they're starting Mike White. Oh, okay. The Mike White that went 37 of 45 for 405, 3 touchdowns and 2 picks. That Mike White? You're damn right. He was outstanding in this game. Yeah, he made some mistakes. Young quarterbacks do that. But to make your first career NFL start against a team that was playing arguably the hottest football of any team in the AFC, having gone to Baltimore a week ago and utterly destroying them in their own building, for them to then have a chance to beat that team the following week in their building after they got shellacked 54-13 last week. There was no way they were going to win this game. That's why we love the National Football League, because it's a week-to-week league. You think a team stinks and they got no shot, and then they come out and they do something like this. Unbelievable. This game, I could tell just from the start of this game that this was a bad omen. It was bad. It felt wrong. The Bengals were struggling. They had a turnover in the red zone. The Jets give it right back on the following possession, and they're settling for field goals, and they're missing opportunities. They're turning the ball over, and I'm saying to myself, they're trying their hardest to give the Jets confidence, to make them feel like they just go out and clobber these guys early, and they will quit. And the Bengals refuse to do it. They had them down on the ground, and they had a chance to step on their larynx. It's 17-7. Just crush their windpipe. Step on it. They were like, nah, man. Like, no. I don't want to do that. I'm a nice guy. So they didn't do it. and the Jets hung in there. And they get this ridiculous touchdown right before the half. It was a one-hand grab initially. They called that incomplete, though. And they still go back and get the touchdown anyway. And so it's 17-14 at half. And I'm like, this doesn't feel right. I'm really nervous. But then the Jets tied up at 17. I'm even more nervous. And then the Bengals are like, hey, we got this, bro. Relax. They take the lead 24-17. And then ultimately take the lead 31-20. And at that point, I felt confident. Okay, whew. A disaster averted. Let's go have a drink. So I go to the kitchen to have a drink because I need to calm down. Washington's playing in the next 35, 40 minutes. I come back and the Jets are already in a position to score. What are we doing? And it happened in a blink of an eye. They scored a touchdown. They go for 2. They don't get it. So they're down 5. I feel even better about that because I said, now they need a touchdown. The Bengals turn it over. I'm like, are you kidding? Like, literally, they give up the touchdown. 2 plays later, they turn it over. And now the Jets are knocking on the door. And that's when they score. And that's when they go for 2. And that's when Mike White, they do like this Philly special type of deal. They throw it to him. He catches it. And that's the photo you see on the thumbnail. He's sitting up like, oh my God, I can't believe this. After Cincinnati Bengals. You dirty bastards. This is why I don't believe in teams like Cincinnati. I don't believe in them. This is the second time the Jets have beaten a team that looks like one of the better teams in the AFC. They've beaten the Titans, who are 6-3. Now they've beaten the Bengals, who are 5-3. Damn these Jets. It's a hell of a win. And now they're in quite the conundrum here. And I spoke about this already, so I don't even spend a lot of time on this. But they went out and got Joe Flacco because they wanted him to start while they had the issue with Zach Wilson. And now with Mike White playing like this, do you go to Joe Flacco? Hell no. You play Mike White. And what if Mike White gets hot? Zach Wilson comes back. Do you just sit him down? You have to, right? Like, that's not a real conversation. But then the conversation becomes, could this become a Robert Griffin III, Kirk Cousins situation? That's where I was trying to go with this. Forget about Joe Flacco. He's really insignificant in the grand scheme of this. What if Zach Wilson turns out to stink? And we don't know this, and we might not know this for 2-3 years. But what if he turns out to stink? And this Mike White fella on the bench turns out to be Kirk Cousins, and he ends up being really good. And you have a dilemma. We spent the number 2 overall pick on this dude. Like, we can't just bail on him. But this guy over here, man, he's giving us Gus Varot vibes. Meanwhile, Heath Schuler's in the game stinking it up. What do we do? I don't know. I'm not saying. I'm just saying it's just one start. It's just one start. That's it. That's all. It was a good one, though. But let's see what happens. He's got at least 3 more starts before Zach Wilson's back, more likely than not. And you know how guys, they see some shit like that, and magically, they feel better. I wouldn't be shocked if he's back in 2 weeks after seeing this performance. And if he does it again, he's like, hey, I got to get back out there. For the Jets fans start loving this dude more than me. So you can see why teams don't like having 2 young quarterbacks on the roster. This is exactly why. Because if the guy that you are invested in starts to struggle and this other guy, they get a glimpse of him and he shows out, now the fans are like, hey, get this mother effer out of here. Get the other guy in there. And Zach Wilson's had some games this season where you go, this is rough. Mike White comes in here and has one of these thrilling victories at the crib. I'm not saying. I'm just saying. What a win for the Jets. What a loss for the Cincinnati Bengals. Texans Rams, I don't got a lot on this one. The score doesn't indicate how big of a beatdown. This was a one-sided beatdown. At one point, this score was 38-0. Literally, the Rams took their foot off the gas pedal and had mercy on these dudes because we were in the third quarter, similar to what they did against the Giants. They scored, I think, 31 against the Giants in the first half. They could have scored 50. if they wanted to against the Giants. They could have scored 50 in this game if they wanted to against the Texans. They took their foot off the gas pedal. So it ended up being 38-22, but don't let that fool you. It was 38-0 at one point. They were destroying these boys. And it started off slow, man. It's not like they just jumped on these boys, 24-0, in the midway through the second quarter. They didn't get that last touchdown to make it 24-0 at half until right before the halftime break. It was 10-0 with like 7-8 minutes to go in the second quarter. Like, it wasn't a blowout, and then shit just got away from him. And you know how it goes. Davis Mills, another game, another interception. He wasn't terrible in this game though, but they're just not a good team. The Texans are not a good team. Rams are 7-1. And they look like a 7-1 team, and then they just added Von Miller. So, yikes. Patriots, Chargers, this was a really good game. Kind of went under the Week 8 radar because there were so many other games that people were fixated on. That Titans Colts game was huge in that AFC South. Obviously, the Cowboys and Vikings game, both teams coming off of a bye, and was Dak going to play? Was he not going to play? Saints and Bucks was a big game in that division because similar to the Colts and the Titans, that was a game where if you wanted to make that division competitive, the Saints needed to win just like the Colts needed to win. So that was going to be interesting. And it was Jameis versus the Bucks and a little bit of a revenge factor type deal there. So there were some storylines in that game. So there were so many different games. And then obviously the Thursday night game, Packers at Cardinals. There's so many different games that you could look at that really kind of hid this game. I had a comment, and I think I divulged this information to you already, but I had a conversation with my dad, with Boss, as we call him. And we were talking about this game in particular because we were doing our sheets. And he said, man, this was the game I thought long and hard on. And every week I have one or two games where I skip it because I don't want to make a decision yet. I skip the game and I come back in and I just sit there and I analyze it and then I make a decision. This was one of those games. And he said, man, I sat and I thought long and hard about this. I said, me too, boss, me too. And he said, man, New England, they coming on, man. And he said, I'm not just saying that because they almost beat us. He's a Dallas Cowboys fan, boss is. I'm not just saying that because they almost beat us. They coming on. You can see that they're getting it and they're getting close. I don't think they're there yet, though. He said they're going to be a problem next year. But they're coming on. And I already said they're well coached. So, and I also said that defensively they got pieces. They've traded some of those pieces, but they've got some stuff. And I was impressed with them. So needless to say, both of us took the Chargers. We didn't think they were ready to win this game. And maybe the Chargers aren't ready for what we thought they were early in the season when they were, 4-1. They've lost 2 straight. And I've said this already about them. Their inability to stop the run is a problem. But also, Justin Herbert is still a young quarterback. Everybody wanted to, announce him and crown him as the next heir apparent to the throne. Like, okay, forget about Josh Allen. Justin Herbert is the next guy. Okay, we'll see about that. And, he had a miscommunication with one of his teammates. And we saw a very big miscommunication cost the team earlier in the week in Arizona. And that pick 6 he threw to Adrian Phillips was a miscommunication. He thinks Jared Cook Jr. is going out. Jared Cook Jr. goes in. So more likely than not, it's an option route. And really both quarterback and receiver need to be on the same page. They need to read the coverage the same. Obviously, Cook read it one way, decided that the in cut was the better option, and Herbert read it another way. He thought the out cut was the better option. He throws the out, Cook goes in. Adrian Phillips is like, I don't know what the hell both of y'all are doing, but I see the rock, so I'm going to go after that. He dives, catches it, gets up, runs for a touchdown, and that was pretty much all she wrote. It was a big-time game for the New England Patriots to get back to 500 on the season. They're 4-4, and this was a back-and-forth game. Nobody ever ran away with this game. This thing was always close, and I just thought that the Chargers would find a way to win this game, but they didn't. They never found a way to get away from the Chargers in this game. And it just, that pick six was a backbreaker because back and forth. And the Patriots are up like 20. It was 17-16 at the time. The Patriots were up, if I'm not mistaken, at the time of that pick. And, or was it the other way around? I think the Chargers might have been 17 and the Patriots were 16. Either way, that pick six gave the Patriots the lead. They go for two, they get it. So I think it was the Patriots that were down 17-16 because they went for two, they got it. And that made it 24-17. And then they tacked on a field goal later on in the game. And it just seemed like their offense, there being the Chargers' offense, was out of sync. Herbert wasn't sharp. It felt like he was always throwing to a covered receiver. I didn't feel like they either he wasn't making the right decisions or they weren't scheming guys open. And some of that could be probably charged to Bill Belichick. He's just really good defensively at taking the things away that you like to do the most and making you have to go to plan B and C. And for a lot of teams, plan B and C is uncomfortable. So Justin Herbert didn't look comfortable. 18-35 in this game for 2 and some change. Like, that's not what he's been this season. He's been, a guy that's been able to put up, big time numbers and make timely throws. He wasn't able to do that in this game. He wasn't able to make that 3rd and 11, 13-yard gain. That wasn't happening in this game. And this season, he's been able to make all those throws in those critical situations. Wasn't able to do it in this game. So big win for the Patriots on the road. If I'm not mistaken, this Patriots team has now beaten the Chargers 2 years in a row in L.A. I think last year they beat the shit out of them like 48-0, if I'm not mistaken. I think Gunnar Olszewski had a punt return for a touchdown. They forced some fumbles and blocked a kick before the half and just all kinds of chicanery. This one wasn't as bad, but it was still the same result, a loss. And now the Chargers are 4-3. And I'm not, this isn't an indictment on the Chargers as much as it is, I'm just not sure about them, and I still think they're maybe a year away. And I felt that way before the season started. Like, hey, this team's going to be dangerous. I think they're a year away. Feel that way about the Patriots too. I think both of these teams are probably a year away, but this was impressive by the Patriots, to say the least. Really gutty performance on the road. Don't have a lot to say about this one. Jacksonville at Seattle. This game was a beatdown as well. 24-0 at one point. Took the Seahawks a while to get it going. They were struggling for a little while, but they finally, were able to pull away from Jacksonville, and Jaguars stink. They're just like the Dolphins and the Lions and all these 1-win, no-win teams. They're right in that mix. They show you on a weekly basis why they're not a good football team. They were never in this game. They never had a chance. And they're a tough watch right now. They really are. And meanwhile, for Seattle, I think what they have to do, Russell Wilson got the pin taken out of his finger today. So maybe that's the sign that he'll be back here shortly. But all in all, when I look at Seattle, they've got to figure out a way to get DK Metcalf the ball more. I think that's the biggest thing that I've been seeing with this team, the last month or so, is he's just not involved enough. Let's see how many targets he had and how many catches he had in this game. And they had this crazy stat of number of straight plays without him touching the ball. And it was like from the last 4 games. And these numbers were astronomical, 40-something, 30-something, 20-something. And I'm like, that's insane for your best player. Like, that doesn't make any sense. DK Metcalf, 6 targets, 6 catches, 43 yards, and 2 touchdowns in this game. That's not enough. Meanwhile, Tyler Lockett had 13 targets. Now, he had 12 catches on those 13 targets for 142 yards, but that's not enough for and I've always said that Tyler Lockett is the glue that holds that Seahawks offense together. That said, the explosive dynamic part of that offense is DK Metcalf, and he needs to touch it more. And I don't give a shit how it happens. Touch pass, jet sweep, slant, wide receiver screen. I don't really care how it happens. It just needs to happen. So anyway, they win that game 31-7. They needed that one, did the Seahawks, to get back into the winning column. I think they had lost like 4 in a row. So that is a big win for them. They're now 3-5. And Russell Wilson will probably be back after the bye week. So they're in a position to try to make a run at that 7 seed. We'll see what they are able to do. Washington at the Broncos. What a disappointing performance by the football team. 17-10 is the final score in this game. The Broncos were everything that we thought they were, and we let them off the hook. Teddy Bridgewater was Teddy Two Gloves, like always. He was Teddo. He was Black Alex Smith. He was everything that we thought he was going to be. And we turned it over. We failed on 4th down. We got 2 kicks blocked. We did all the things that bad teams do. All the shit that I talked about with Jacksonville and Detroit and the Jets and all the teams that do stupid shit because that's what bad teams do. We did the same thing. We're no different than Detroit or, Chicago or any of these teams that got lucky enough to win a couple of games, but truly they're actually bad football teams. We're no different. And we create and invent ways to lose on a weekly basis. Nothing sticks out about this game other than, the missed field goals by both teams, really. The Broncos missed a field goal as well. And Washington had 2 field goals blocked. And they went for it on 4th down once, didn't get it. For the second straight week, Washington is 0 in the red zone. Last week against Green Bay, they were 0-4. This week, they were 0-2. That makes it a combined 0-6 the last 2 games. That's losing football. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. That is a recipe for disaster. Then you throw in the turnovers. They had 2 of them in this game. Could have had 2 or 3 more. They were 2 more fumbles by Taylor Heineke. This is a team that is just reeling. The bye week couldn't have come at a better time. Had a couple of guys go down in this game. They had a bunch of injuries going into the game. Same could be said for Denver. They were all kinds of banged up, but they found a way to get it done. Again, no stats for either team really stands out in this game. As you can see, 17-10, there weren't many points scored. You had to be a fan of one of these 2 teams to enjoy this game. Honestly speaking, this was like one of those times where you hear only a face a mother could love. This was only a game 2 teams of fans of these 2 teams could love. Like if you didn't have a rooting interest, you want no part of this game. It was ugly from start to finish, but the Denver Broncos find a way to get the win, snap their losing streak, and end that at 4 games. Now Washington's losing streak is at 4 games. They were once 2-2, if you can believe that. Seems like an eternity ago that they were 2-2. They're now 2-6 on the season. But the Broncos, they're no dummies. They realize that even though they got this win, they stink. And so they trade away Von Miller because they realize he's not a part of the future and they're not going anywhere of note this season, especially not with the way their quarterback situation is set up. Big win for the Broncos, though, because at some point you just want to stop losing. They did that, and now they're 4-4 on the season. Buccaneers, Saints, this was the most surprising result of the day. And again, I say that not because the Saints won. They are very capable of beating Tampa Bay. They know how to play the Buccaneers. This is family business. I tell you that all the time because family business is different than any kind of business. All right. These teams know each other. There's no fear factor here. I don't give a shit if you're 10-0, you play a family member, and they don't give a shit about your flawless record. They think they can beat you because they beat you last year twice, or they beat you once last year, and they know they can beat you. So I wasn't shocked that the Saints beat them, especially because the Saints defensively are really good. So, and they give Brady fits. Remember, they beat Brady twice. Once they beat the brakes off of him in New Orleans on a Sunday night. So we know they're fully capable of beating the Buccaneers. But what was surprising was once Jameis Winston went down in the first quarter with what we later found out was a torn ACL and a damaged MCL, that they had to bring in Trevor Siemian. Keep in mind, there's no Taysom Hill. They had to bring in Trevor Siemian. I'm thinking, oh, shit, this game's over. And even though the Saints up until that point had been playing really well, and I think at one point they were up 16-7. Let me check. 16-7 in this game. Yes, 23-7, as a matter of fact. They were up at one point in this game. I still said, it's Trevor effing Siemian. They're going to lose this game. And sure enough, the Bucs got on their horse. They cut this thing to 23-21. And I'm thinking, okay, here it is. There it is. All right. I think it was a Mike Evans touchdown that cut it to 23-21. I say, okay, here they come. Here they come. They're on their horse now. Giddy up. Boop. There they go. They're on their horse now. And from that point, I thought they were going to dominate the game. Saints get a field goal, and then the Bucs took the lead. They went for two. They didn't get it, but they were up 27-26, and I thought they were going to win the game at that moment. And then the Buccaneers defense wasn't able to get a stop. The Saints had this brain fart defensively, and you don't see this from them very often, where they just let a receiver, I don't even know who this dude is. I've never even seen him before. All right. He gets behind the defense. There isn't a Saint defender within 20 yards of this dude. I kid you not. And they said that this guy is some kind of track star, right? Played at LSU. Never seen him. Never heard of this guy. Guy's a bum. Seriously, I kid. But this dude is 20 yards behind the Saints defense. Just a blown coverage. And I'm like, oh, yeah, they trying to lose the game now. Like, okay, you can't be giving Brady freebies. Yeah, this shit's over. And they go down the field. They respond just like I talked about with the Bills. When the Dolphins punched them in the mouth, cut it to 6, they could have wilted under that pressure. Nope. They calmly put together a 6-minute drive, moved it down the field, kicked the field goal, pushed that lead out to 9. Same thing with these Saints. After giving up that play, that was demoralizing. You're now trailing for the first time in the game, and then they just rattled off a 6-minute drive. Got a field goal, wanted a touchdown, but got a field goal, gave it back to Brady with about, 2 minutes left, or a minute and some change left, a minute and 40 something left. And you're thinking Brady's about to do these boys. He just needs a field goal. That's it. And they pick his ass off and take that shit to the crib. Pretty much. And I think, he took that shit to the crib. And I was thinking you might want to just get down and take these knees. He's like, nah, F that. Because it was only 8 when he returned it for a touchdown. I'm like, bro, if this kicker misses this extra point, I could punch you in your face. But he made the extra point, put him up by 9, and that was all she wrote at that point. I was like, wow, that Saints defense was electrifying in that game. Brady struggled. That wasn't a typical Brady game. Brady threw 2 interceptions. I mean, he still threw for 375 yards and 4 touchdowns. I mean, let's not over-exaggerate, but that wasn't typical Brady. 5 touchdowns, no interceptions, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, whatever. That defense was flying around for the Saints. And they got after Tom Brady. Let me see if they sacked him. I felt like they sacked him a couple of times. I know they hit him a couple of times. Really rattled his cage a bit. They sacked Brady 1 time. Thought they sacked him more than that. But, bottom line is they sacked Brady 3 times. I thought they sacked him more than once. They sacked Brady 3 times, but they were ferocious. They got after Brady. They made him uncomfortable. And when they had to make a stop, that interception, it wasn't that dissimilar from the interception Carson Wentz threw. Don't see the safety coming down. Safety undercuts the route, picks it off, takes it the other way. Beautiful play. And that Saints defense is for real. It's legit. I don't know what they're going to do. And speaking of the Saints, I do want to throw this out there while we're having this conversation. Phillip Rivers. Remember, before the season started, this was a throwaway line. I said, hey, Drew Brees. Phillip Rivers said that he doesn't mind coming back and playing for somebody late in the season if they're a contender. If the phone rings, he's going to keep himself in shape. If a team needs a quarterback, I'm like, when does a team ever need a quarterback that's a contender? When does a contender ever need a quarterback? When does that ever happen? If your quarterback gets hurt, it's over. But I'm looking at this Saints team and I'm like, this is the perfect situation for Phillip Rivers. Like, this is exactly what he envisioned when he made the statement at the end of the preseason when he said, look, I'm willing to play for somebody late in the season if they give me a call. This is like, you can't draw it up any better. Perfect defense, and they'll get Michael Thomas back. They've got enough weapons. He can spread it around. He loves throwing to the back out of the backfield. Like, This is tailor-made for, and I don't think they're going to make the call, but this is tailor-made for a situation for him to come back. And I've heard from people that Phillip Rivers is one of the smartest quarterbacks in NFL history. Like, if he were to come in there, he could learn that entire playbook in, 3 weeks or so and really be comfortable calling everything, making checks and protections at the line, and all of the things that you expect from a guy that has played in this league as long as Phillip Rivers has. So I just wanted to throw that out there. He said he hasn't heard from the Saints, and I don't think he will. But in watching this game, they can't think that Trevor Siemian is going to get the job done. That's fool's gold. So I'm thinking Peyton is like, nah, we good, because eventually Taysom Hill's going to come back, and I got confidence in him. I'm like, I wouldn't do that if I were you. But to each his own. But big win for the Saints. Man, that was a huge win. And now all of a sudden, shit's getting tight in the NFC South. They're 5-2, and the Buccaneers, don't look now, they're 6-2. So all of a sudden, they're only a half game back of the division-leading Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So shit just got interesting in that division with that win. And obviously the Sunday night game, we've already done that, so I don't need to go over that. And the Monday night game, same thing. Already been there, done that. So let's finish this up with garbage time. And so just quickly wanted to recap the weekend that was, specifically college football. College football is crazy. It's wide open this year. When it's all said and done, it may come down to the same teams that we thought, Georgia and Alabama, but Bama's going to have to beat Georgia in the SEC championship. That's what it's going to come down to now that they've already lost the game. Nobody's beating Georgia not named Alabama. Now that goes for the playoffs as well. Nobody's beating, Georgia. That defense, I told you in week 2 of the college football season, maybe it was week 3, like, this is the most suffocating defense I've seen since probably one of those Alabama defenses from like 2016 or 17. One of those defenses in there where they were shutting teams out and just beating teams into a pulp. But this Georgia defense is legit. Their offense, it is just disgusting. Downright nasty. But their defense is just as filthy as the offense is, in a good way. The offense is filthy in a bad way. It's dirty. It's nasty. But the defense is all of those same adjectives, but in a good way. So that's the only thing. If they don't win the national championship, it'll be because they met their match defensively. Somebody that may not be as talented on defense as them, but has enough talent to be able to shut down what is a really pedestrian Georgia offense. And now all of a sudden, you're one mistake away from losing a game, 13-10. And I could see them find themselves in a position like that against a team like Bama, per se. Because their defense just isn't, or offense just isn't all that great. But they're smoking everybody. And Bama has LSU. That game has lost its luster this year, obviously. So we'll see what happens there. But I just don't see anybody. I remember some people were, you think that Kentucky could beat Georgia? No. Nah. And they smoked those boys as well. So the Big Ten is interesting. There's all kinds of craziness going on in that conference. But when it's all said and done, Michigan lost to Michigan State. That was the big game of the weekend. I remember there were so many people talking so much shit about the Michigan State hire. And they hired my man that used to be a defensive coordinator under Kirby Smart. I can't think of his name right now, but he went to Colorado, took the Colorado job. And Colorado wasn't all that great. But home for him is Michigan State. That's where he played his college ball. And the opportunity arose for him to go to Michigan State, and he took it. And people are like, why are you hiring him? He wasn't even good at Colorado. And now look at Michigan State. That game was crazy. And, all of the people that can't stand John Harbaugh or Jim Harbaugh and thinks he can't win big games, that's another black eye and stain on his resume as Michigan coach. Because it seems like anytime they play somebody really good, they find a way to lose. And gotta beat Michigan State if you're Michigan. Gotta find a way. And they literally had no offense but their running back. He scored 5 touchdowns. 5! Unbelievable. Things are getting interesting. I'll leave it at that. But when it's all said and done, it's still Georgia. It's still Bama. Cincinnati's number 2. They stink. I mean, they don't stink. They're just not. They're not good enough to beat anybody, in the SEC. I'd put Kentucky against Cincinnati, and I think Kentucky would beat them. So the fact that they're number 2 feels fraudulent, but that's the state of college football right now. Oklahoma's a joke. Okay, I can't respect them. I don't respect them. So there's a lot of foolishness going on, but that's what happens when the powers that be aren't the powers that be. It allows for all of this parity, but we all know it's just like, this is the thing about college sports, whether it's football or basketball. It's always cool to see new blood. It's always cool to root for the upset in the field of 64, in the field of 32. And then you get to the Sweet 16, and maybe there's 1 or 2 teams that shouldn't be there, and they're playing basketball, and and you start to follow them, and they become a great story, and you're like, man, we're rooting for them. But after a while, it's not cool anymore, because you realize, oh shit, they might actually go to the championship. And when they get there, they're gonna meet a team that they have no business going up against, and they're gonna get smoked. That's what always happens in college sports. Is the cool story starts out, they win some games, and next thing you know, they're in the Sweet 16, and then they're in the Elite 8, and they're like, oh my God, this is crazy. And then you realize, uh-oh, now all the good teams are left, and they're here. This isn't good. And at some point, you're going to get a dud of a matchup because they're going to get their brains blown out. Now, sometimes they hang tough, and they get eliminated, but they hang tough. But more likely than not, the one time in college basketball I can recall that not taking place was when Butler, when they were still like a mid-major, went to the national championship and almost beat Duke with Gordon Hayward. They had Gordon Hayward, and Duke really wasn't good that year. And we had a bunch of seniors, and we finally got to the championship game with all of those guys that were on that team and won it. But that was the only year where it wasn't a blowout. But that's what's going to happen in college football this year. It's a cute story that Cincinnati's number 2, and you got all these teams like Michigan State coming up here. And Michigan State doesn't count. They're in a major Power 5, right? But Cincinnati's cool, and some of these other teams that are moving their way up. Oh, these are great stories until they meet Alabama or they meet Georgia and they get crushed. Then that shit isn't cool. So anyway, college football is crazy. It's always crazy, but it's crazier than ever this year because Clemson stinks. Bama, and I told you Bama was They're still going to end up being there when it's all said and done. And Georgia is super good defensively and not so much offensively. So anyway, I digress. Got a couple of super chats before we get out of here. Fat American. And we'll go to our final segment, or we'll transition from our final segment. And Fat American, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, hey, Lou. And thank you for being a member of the MOBB as well. It's not crazy to say Jamin Davis isn't a bust right now. I don't think he'll be the next Ray Lewis or even Fletcher, just a Mr. Old reliable. Yeah, but why would you, even if you didn't think he was going, even if you thought he was going to stink now, which you don't, you're just saying he's going to be a solid player, that's not what you draft in the first round. Even if that is true, why would you use the B word now? Why would you use the B word 7 games into his, or 8 games into his NFL career? Why would you use the B word? That's the stuff I try to have people refrain from doing. And also, you have to keep in mind, and this is what I said clearly when we drafted him, this guy is not going to burst onto the scene and tear shit up in his rookie season. That's not where he was as a college player when we drafted him. They're drafting him on his potential. They're not drafting him on what he's going to come in and give them right away. He may be an all-pro 2-3 years from now. I'm not saying that he will or he won't. He's got the potential to be that, though. And that's why they drafted him. So, was that a mistake? We'll find out. Were there other guys available at the time of that pick that could have helped this team more than him? Yes, absolutely. But they had a vision for the kind of player they were looking for and the skill set and attributes they wanted that player to have. He fits all of those things. He checks all of those boxes. That's why they took him. Let's see what he's going to do. But I don't want to talk about the B word, especially with a guy that's in his rookie season having only played 8 games. SLJ James. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. SLJ James writes, Louie, what's good, bro? What's good with you? Says, I'm a Jets fan, but I've been following you for 4 years now, and I watch weekly, and I just want to show my support to my boy, Louie T. I really appreciate you, man. Thank you so much, and it's good to hear from you, and I hope to hear from you in the future, man. Don't be a stranger, even if you don't want to super chat. Even on a Wednesday, when we go social media maneuvers, just use the hashtag and say what up. If you're there and you're watching. Look, I'm a lurker too, so I know how these things go. So I'm not saying you got to be actively commenting on every video, but just say what up every once in a while. That's all. Just so I know you're there, just so we can chop it up, so I'm familiar with your name when I see it. That's all. Anyway, got another super chat from my guy, Fat American. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. My guy, Fat American writes, reread my message. I said that he isn't. LOL. I wasn't saying that you were saying he was or wasn't. I just don't like the word being brought up now. There's no reason to even have that conversation right now. That's what I'm saying. I'm not fussing at you because you said he's going to be a bust or you're saying he's not going to be a bust. I don't even want to have that name, that term and his name in the same sentence. That's what I'm saying. Like, don't bring it up is what I'm saying, because it's too early to even have that conversation. Because you know how it goes. One person brings it up, then somebody else brings it up. Next thing you know, I got a whole bunch of people throwing the B word around with this young fella. You already got a fan base on edge right now because we stink. So the last thing we need to do is complicate matters. And I said this before the season started. When we drafted him, this young fella is not going to come in here and tear shit up. He won't be in the rookie of the year discussion. Trust me when I tell you this. The man only started at Kentucky this past year because his roommate suffered a stroke. It's not like this dude was at Kentucky tearing it up for 3 years. He's still raw. He's still rough around the edges, needs refining, but the size, the speed, the physicality, undeniable. That's what they want to work with. He's got workable traits. Let's see what they turn into. But again, I don't even want to entertain the B word. Even if you're not saying he is, I don't even want to bring it up. That's all. Fat American. Thank you for the super chat. Got another one from my guy, Fat American. Greatly appreciate you, who writes. But about Jamin, I know a lot of fans are crying, wasted pick, blah, blah, blah. But I honestly have seen some flashes from him. That blitz speed, for one. And that's part of the reason that they love him, is that this guy, I saw it was a play against Mahomes where he was a blur. And that's the kind of stuff they've got to find more ways to get him involved in the blitz packages and free him up and get him coming to the quarterback with that speed. They did it this past week, as a matter of fact. He got a personal foul penalty, but he got on Teddy's ass like that. All right. And I hit Teddy in the damn head. He's got to be better than that. I mean, he literally helmet to helmet Teddy. He's got to be better than that. He'll get a fine in his locker tomorrow, but we know he can run. What we want to see is the Jamin Davis that starts to understand what offenses are trying to do and starts to end up in some passing lanes and picking some shit off, because he's got that skill set to be able to do that. That's what we want to see. And I think we'll get there eventually. SLJ James, thank you for the super chat and doubling up. Double up. Thank you for doubling up, SLJ James, who writes, I got you, bro, and I want to hear that double up. You know what it is. LOL, he says. You know what it is. Double up. Really appreciate you, SLJ James, and hopefully I'll hear from you in the future. So that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on the 219th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. Rough week for the kid, man. 4-11. Ouch. I've never had a week that bad. I feel like the Chiefs right now. Like, I'm not myself. I'm not in first place. I'm not even close to first place. People are doubting me, throwing dirt on me. People want to cast doubt on my name, I got to rise like a phoenix from the ashes. It's got to start sooner rather than later. I'd like it to be this week. We'll see what happens. But, man, what a crazy, wild week. Week number 8 in the National Football League was. And if you're out there, do me one huge favor. Hit the subscribe button for more great content. Turn on your notification bell so you don't miss a thing. And also hit the like button, as that helps this channel grow immensely. Until next time, I'm your man, Louie T, telling you, get off the bench, get in the game, and kick it with me, your man, Louie T. Have a good one. Take care. And I'll see you guys next time.
LouieTeeNetwork.